Hello and welcome back here on VTV International for another live edition of VTV News. My name is Dai Chang and let's check out what we have for you in this bulletin. Bilateral relationship between Vietnam and Singapore has developed significantly and expected to strengthen in the future. The Thanh Long Cup, Vietnam's first international traditional martial arts championship, kicked off. And 250th birthday of the great poet Nguyễn Du was commemorated in Hanoi. We now begin with some updates on political scene. Prime Minister Nguyễn Tấn Dũng departed Malaysia for an official visit to Singapore at the invitation of Singaporean Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong. Here he attended a roundtable seminar with leading enterprises in Singapore. He recognized the strong developments in Vietnam-Singapore relations, especially in the areas of economics, trade, investment, and tourism, and expressed his wish that relations will be further strengthened in the future. Earlier, the Prime Minister met with Vietnamese embassy staff and representatives from the Vietnamese community in Singapore. He asked the embassy staff and Vietnamese representative agencies in Singapore to implement bilateral cooperative programs to cement their strategic partnership. The same day, Prime Minister Nguyễn Tấn Dũng attended a ceremony to mark Singapore's 50th anniversary of independence. Over the past 40 years, the bilateral relationship between Vietnam and Singapore has developed significantly. The country is currently Vietnam's second largest trade partner and the biggest ASEAN investor in Vietnam. According to Singaporean experts, the two countries' relationship is expected to strengthen in the future.
September 2013 marked an important milestone in Vietnam-Singapore diplomatic relationship, when the two countries became strategic partners. Vietnam became Singapore's only strategic partner in the ASEAN region. Since then, the two countries have continued to develop with visits from high-ranking officials and officials exchanges.
It's not just political or economic. Right? It extends to the judiciaries, courts cooperating with each other. There is also military cooperation. There's also increasing people-to-people exchange, particularly in education. And of course, for Singapore, Vietnam is an important market. At the same time, Singapore is also the largest investor from ASEAN. The relationship is also important because Vietnam is an important player. Vietnam's role in maintenance of stability in the South China Sea is also an important area.
One of the highlights in the two countries' bilateral relations is the investment relationship between the two countries. Vietnam received investment and experience from Singapore, while the ASEAN country can seek out new opportunities to expand in Vietnam.
i.e. Singapore sees a lot of investment opportunities in Vietnam. The first will be in consumer services. So Vietnam has a very big population of about more than 90 million. So that's a sizable consumer base, young population, median age of below 30. So there's a lot of demand for Singapore's goods and services. And the second opportunity will be in infrastructure. Vietnam still has a lot of room to grow and to develop. And in order for Vietnam to scale up, you will need to build more roads, airport, logistics facilities, and also in urban development.
In April, the Vietnam-Singapore Industrial Park, or VSIP, received its investment license from Nghệ An province. This is the 7th VSIP zone in Vietnam, showing Singapore's commitment in expanding business in Vietnam. Vietnam is also improving its investment environment to attract foreign investors to the country.
Now, public administrative reform is now considered a government priority to improve the business environment. The country's efforts are reflected in the Provincial Competitiveness Index or PCI, an area in which Vietnam has received a substantial amount of support from international organizations.
The Provincial Competitiveness Index, or PCI, is the result of a collaborative effort between the Vietnam Chamber of Commerce and Industry, or VCCI, and the Vietnam Competitiveness Initiative, funded by the U.S. Agency for International Development, or USAID. PCI was first measured in 2005 to evaluate the competitiveness of cities and provinces nationwide.
10 years since the first measurements, PCI has been proven to play a positive role. PCI enhanced the dialogue between policymakers and businesses to simplify administrative processes. This has improved the business environment in each locality and in the nation at large.
Besides PCI, administrative reform is also reflected in many other indexes, including the Provincial Governance and Public Administration Performance Index and the Public Administrative Reform Index. These indexes are built with the support of UNDP in Vietnam.
Clearly, there is improvement in terms of citizens getting better administrative services, and those include services they receive at one-stop shops and as well as public service.
The above indexes have helped local authorities to see the limitations in administrative processes. Basing on that, they can have suitable actions and changes to create a better environment for businesses and improve local socio-economic situation. I believe that publishing an annual PAPI index is very important. The index measures transparency, which benefits both European and Vietnamese businesses.
Building indexes to assess administrative procedures are very important. It allows the government and investors to assess the capability and efficiency of local authorities and allows for economic development.
Building the public administrative reform indexes is part of the nation's comprehensive plan in administrative reform for 2011 to 2020, approved by the government in November 2011. This shows Vietnam's effort in becoming a more attractive destination for international investors.
Vietnam's Ministry of Industry and Trade has announced the main contents of the EU-Vietnam Free Trade Agreement, or EVFTA. Accordingly, when the agreement takes effect, the EU will immediately remove about 85.6% of its import tariffs on Vietnamese goods. After 7 years, this rate will be raised to 99.2%. In detail, goods such as produce, juice, handbags, suitcases, plastic products, pottery, and glassware will enjoy zero tariffs when the FTA enters into force. Concerning Vietnamese rice, the EU will apply zero tariffs on a certain volume of imports. As for EU exports to Vietnam, the tariffs on automobiles, alcoholic drinks, pork, and chicken will be eliminated within 9 to 10 years. According to figures by the Vietnam Seafood Association of Exporters and Producers, export of Vietnamese shrimp to the U.S. will increase for the rest of this year thanks to an assurance of supply and a low anti-dumping tax on shrimp. However, as U.S. dollars remains strong against Vietnamese dong, Vietnamese exporters still have to face a fierce competition from other countries. As estimated, shrimp export to the U.S. this year will reach $638 million, a decrease of 40% compared to 2014. Currently, the U.S. is the biggest importer of Vietnamese shrimp, accounting for 20% of export values. Now, following the success of lychee exports earlier this year, farmers in the northern province of Hưng Yên and authorities at all levels are now preparing to export longan, a specialty of Hưng Yên province. A key task for the sector now is to create linkages between producers and distributors.
Bùi Quang Dang's longan farm in Hưng Yên province is grown following VietGAP standards, and thus his longans are qualified for export to the U.S.
We feel assured because we receive great support from local authorities. Longan farmers like us will prosper if we can find markets for our products.
To enhance farming techniques and build up a brand name, the provincial authorities have instructed farmers to apply modern methods of planting, harvesting and preserving longan.
In 2015, Hưng Yên City tries to support farmers in applying Vietgap standards. We are striving to build up a good reputation for our longans.
For a long time now, Hưng Yên longan has been famous in the domestic market, with high consumption recorded in consecutive years. Hưng Yên longan is favored by Hanoians. In the main harvest, we can sell up to hundreds of tons of fruit. Longans grown in the neighborhoods of Hưng Yên City are of high value. If Hưng Yên longan can find its way to the U.S. market, longan farmers and businesses in northern Vietnam will greatly benefit because they will reduce dependence on the domestic market, thereby raising longan prices.
Now, a decree to guide the implementation of the new enterprise law and investment law is expected to be issued this month. According to the Ministry of Planning and Investment, the draft decree was submitted to the National Assembly for approval in May, 2 months before the law took effect. The ministry will work with the government office to finalize the paperwork and issue the decree before September 15th. Since the new laws took effect on July the 1st, the lack of official guidance has caused difficulties in registering for new enterprises and investment projects. Now, the State Bank of Vietnam has lifted the credit growth target ceiling for nearly 20 commercial banks. The decision was issued due to positive credit growth in the first 6 months of 2015 and increased demand for credit. At the beginning of this year, the State Bank of Vietnam set the credit growth target ceiling at 13%. The recent lift aims to raise credit growth this year to 17% and boost economic growth. Fluctuations in interest rates are not mentioned, but the lift will increase competition between commercial banks. The 5 prioritized areas are agriculture, export, small and medium enterprises, high-tech sectors, and supporting industries. The State Bank of Vietnam will also monitor credit lending to avoid bad debts. Vietnam's first international traditional martial arts championship kicks off. And join us for an exhibition entitled Fly, featuring paintings and handmade items made by children with disabilities in Hanoi.
Exotic Vietnam is an intriguing blend of many charms. This land is where all manner of stunning landscapes await like a visual feast, rivaled only by the beauty of its people and their abundantly rich tradition and culture. Here is where you can relive the past in richest color or live it up in the bright lights of the big city. With so much more to offer, Vietnam is simply unforgettable.
Welcome back. Now, the Thanh Long Cup of Vietnam's first international traditional martial arts championship kicked off this morning in Hanoi. The largest ever event of its kind brought together 50 martial arts teams from 30 countries around the globe. In the competition, martial arts athletes will compete in 5 categories in 19 weight classes, 10 for male and 9 for female competitors. The traditional martial arts are highly popular among Vietnamese people as a way to stay physically healthy and mentally focused, and as a self-defense technique. Vietnamese martial arts have been widely practiced in many countries around the world. Through these practices, they promote Vietnamese identity and traditions throughout the world. Now let's take a look at the following report to see why the traditional martial arts have gained many practitioners.
After some visits to the martial art dojos in Vietnam, these 2 men were charmed by a Vietnamese traditional martial art. Later, they decided to return to Vietnam and practice in Thanh Phong Martial Arts School.
This is a good example of how traditional Vietnamese martial arts have developed outside the country and attracted many practitioners.
In Vietnam, public dojos of martial arts attract practitioners of all ages and social standing. This is also a unique cultural scene that interests many foreign tourists. According to Vietnamese martial art masters, it is an honor to be able to spread traditional values through their teaching.
For children and young practitioners, we are trying to promote the custom of waking up early and doing morning exercises. The practices of Vietnamese martial arts reflect the traditional sporting spirit and national pride.
Vietnamese martial arts have developed with the country's 1,000-year history of building and protecting national sovereignty. Thus, through these practices, practitioners can clearly perceive traditional Vietnamese values. Through generations, they have been well preserved and developed.
This is a practice that can bring you a lot of physical strength. Currently, it is very popular worldwide.
Vietnamese martial arts are not purely just a physical practice, but also include a comprehensive exercise for body and mind. That is why I'm practicing it, to have full control of my physical and mental ability. Vietnamese martial arts are a combination of physical and mental exercises, with Vietnamese identity at the core. This is the reason Vietnamese martial arts have transcended national borders to gain popularity in many parts of the world.
Now, an international conference entitled The Legacy and Historical Importance of Nguyễn Du, Great National Poet and Global Personality, was held on Saturday in Hanoi. Co-hosted by the Academy of Social Sciences and the People's Committee of Hà Tĩnh Province, the conference brought new perspectives into Nguyễn Du's works, including the epic A Tale of Kiều, written in Nôm script, and his various poems written in Han script.
At the conference, researchers delved into the values of Nguyễn Du's works and revealed many new perspectives and approaches to studying his writings. Researchers from countries like Japan, France, South Korea, and the Czech Republic presented in-depth looks into the life and works of Vietnam's great poet. They included studies of feminism in The Tale of Kiều and historical and social implications of the French translations of Kiều, amongst others.
Nguyễn Du was a great philosopher. His works and he himself poses a very modern view of life and the world around. It could be said that he was way ahead of his time.
Many of Nguyễn Du's works bear cross-cultural significance. His magnum opus, The Tale of Kiều, written in Nôm script, is lauded by many experts and scholars across the world. The Tale of Kiều tells of a very hard life. It's about a simple person who has to go through lots of hardships in life, but still keeps her identity and her morals. Whatever the circumstances, she always tries to keep her dignity. The Tale of Kiều is a classic in Vietnam. It can be compared to Alexander Pushkin's Eugene Onegin in Russia in terms of the mark it has left. The Saturday conference was one of many activities to commemorate the 250th birth anniversary of Nguyễn Du. The delegation of Nguyễn Du researchers and readers will also visit the great poet's hometown in Hà Tĩnh Province on this occasion.
The traditional communal houses are the focus of an exhibition that kicked off on Saturday in Hanoi, entitled Vietnamese Village Communal Houses, Things Remained Unlost. The exhibition presents the values of Vietnamese communal houses through more than 100 photographs taken at many heritage sites and cultural spaces in northern Vietnam. The showcase also recreates a village culture through community activities such as cooking, swan singing, sculpting, carving, and other handicrafts. The exhibition runs from the 8th of August to the 23rd at Heritage Space in Hanoi. Now, the Labour Theatre in Hanoi hosted an exhibition this weekend entitled Fly, featuring paintings and handmade items made by children with disabilities from Thuy An and Hoa Binh villages. The event helped people understand and sympathize with the children here who must endure difficulties to live, to learn, and to dream.
Disabilities, physically or mentally, did not stop this teenager from expressing themselves through the paintings.
Their worldview is very simple. Their paintings are of their everyday lives. I bought this painting to show my support. I really like the use of bright colors, the green of nature mixed with the yellow brick house and red roofs.
Their artworks, along with 20 others by disabled teenagers and children from Thuy An and Hoa Binh villages, were showcased to raise funds to benefit the two villages. The exhibition is a last event in the Imperfection Project, organized by the Center for Sustainable Development Studies Vietnam. The project aims to bridge the gap between the disabled and society. The sale of these paintings and handmade items made by these children will benefit the children villages in Hanoi and help improve the facilities here. The first exhibition in the Imperfection Project, Mosaic, held in 2014, raised over $2,000 and saw the participation of nearly 70 volunteers. Organizers hope that this exhibition will be more successful and offer even more help to the disabled children.
And our following segment of Week in Review will bring you the headlines of this week's news.
U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry began his three-day visit to Vietnam on Thursday to mark the 20th anniversary of diplomatic ties between the two countries. Party General Secretary Nguyễn Phú Trọng received the U.S. Secretary of State in Hanoi on Friday. He acknowledged the efforts made by both countries' negotiating teams on the Trans-Pacific Partnership, saying that Vietnam will continue to cooperate closely with the U.S. and other related parties to attempt to complete the agreement. For his part, Kerry said that the U.S. would boost the implementation of commitments with Vietnam in priority issues in accordance with the two countries' joint statement on bilateral comprehensive partnership in 2013 and the Vietnam-U.S. joint vision statement in 2015. Earlier on Friday, the U.S. Secretary of State attended a reception by State President Trương Tấn Sang and held talks with Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister Phạm Bình Minh in Hanoi. John Kerry and Phạm Bình Minh also attended a conference to discuss 20 years of Vietnam-U.S. relations.
Prime Minister Nguyễn Tấn Dũng arrived in Putrajaya on Friday on an official visit to Malaysia, following an invitation from his Malaysian counterpart Najib Razak. During the visit, the Vietnamese and Malaysian governments have issued a joint statement on the framework for their bilateral strategic partnership. The Malaysian Prime Minister emphasized that it was a milestone for the two countries' cooperation in various fields. The two nations signed a memorandum of understanding on the extension of PM3 CAA between Petronas and Petro-Vietnam. On this occasion, the State Bank of Vietnam granted a certificate to the Malaysian bank CIMB to open a wholly foreign-owned bank in Vietnam. Prime Minister Nguyễn Tấn Dũng and his Malaysian counterpart Najib Razak agreed to upgrade the existing Vietnam-Malaysia Comprehensive Partnership to strategic partnership level.
The 40th ASEAN Foreign Ministers meeting in Kuala Lumpur concluded on Thursday. Vietnam's Minister of Foreign Affairs Phạm Bình Minh attended the event. During the morning session, ASEAN members held meetings with Japan, the Republic of Korea and China. The three Northeast Asian countries affirmed the importance of enhancing ASEAN +3 cooperation. Japan said they will continue its security and maritime safety cooperation with ASEAN. The Republic of Korea agreed with ASEAN to launch the ASEAN Republic of Korea Action Plan for 2016 to 2020. The two sides also set a target of reaching $200 billion in bilateral trade turnover by 2020. Both ASEAN and China agreed to upgrade the ASEAN-China Free Trade Agreement and to achieve $150 billion in trade by 2020.
After the conclusion of the 14th negotiating round, Vietnam and the European Union have reached an agreement in principle on the EU-Vietnam Free Trade Agreement. A press conference was held in Hanoi on Tuesday to announce this concluding milestone in the negotiation process. Minister of Industry and Trade Vũ Huy Hoàng, an ambassador and head of delegation of the European Union or EU in Vietnam, attended the event. The negotiations started in June 2012 and have undergone 13 official sessions. The FTA will create a wider trading market for Vietnam and 27 EU member countries. The trade pact is expected to increase Vietnam's export to the bloc by 30 to 40%.
The General Directorate of Roads has announced that funding of nearly 900 billion Vietnamese dong, or $41.5 million, would be needed to repair parts of national highways. These roads were heavily damaged by ongoing heavy rains and floods in the northern region during the last 2 weeks. Around 35,000 square meters of road surface has been eroded, and nearly 165,000 cubic meters of soil and rocks have slid from mountainsides. Initial cleanup costs are estimated to have reached $5.5 million.
And just before we conclude our bulletin, let's take a look at our updated weather forecast. And that is also the end of our bulletins for today. Remember that you can always visit us at vtv4.vn or youtube.com/vtv4go. Once again, thank you for joining us and goodbye for now.